Early in my research, I had a hard time accepting what I'd learned, continuing to see UnEarth as a place of magic, where the dead walked. Then I began to realize these creatures were simply newly discovered life, provided by life expanding in our universe, which I refer to as Universe Alpha. For research purposes, I have thus labeled UnEarth as Universe Delta. Excerpt from the Journal of Dr. Francisco Amul, Murcia, August 1894. Another Medolian. The tent flapped shut, cutting off a blinding flash of sunlight as the sounds of the desert rider's footsteps faded.
Finally, alone.
Alex could barely move without making the pain worse. The same air blessing his lungs was wreaking havoc on the open nerve endings all over his body, most of which had stopped soaking his clothes in blood by now. Their methods were exuberant. He had to give them that. Every inch of the Raytheon pain ceremony was awash with drama, complete with shouting, grand gestures, powerful speeches he couldn't understand, and calls and responses. Once handed the ceremonial blade, which seemed to be a regular run-of-the-mill knife you might buy from a hardware store, the new Raytheon in charge was able to lead a chant and give their own gospel. Each spoke as though getting their hands on the blade was all they'd ever wanted. And once their individual show was over, the real fun began. What riled the bunch more than anything? Torture. Yet after all Alex had been through these last few hours, he knew Bennett had gotten it much worse. The Raytheons had chosen the soldier as their favorite. 5 times he was beaten unconscious, and 5 times he got back up remarkably quickly. By the 4th time, Alex thought he was witnessing a miracle. Not once did Bennett cry for mercy, forcing many of the stoic riders to let slip their frustrations. One Raytheon even had to be forcibly pulled off Bennett by her fellow cult members when she tried to strangle him with a whip. At the moment, however, the soldier was lying on his side a few feet away from Alex, passed out.
The infections he'll get alone.
Alex shook the thought away.
No, stay here. Keep your mind here, on the situation. We know why they cut us, because they're freaking psychos. But why did they cut themselves?
He'd pondered it the whole time. After each Raytheon had their time with the knife, they would cut themselves across the wrist, just shy of fatally, and drain the blood onto a small black stone.
It was the damnedest thing.
Morbid as the thought was, part of Alex missed the man in the mask. At least when Joseph was around, he was only sick to his stomach, and not also shivering and in horrible pain. Though meeting a demon residing inside a boy had been an utterly terrifying and unwelcome experience overall.
Poor Yuri. Now I know why Isaiah wanted us to wait for him. I just hope the kid inside Joseph, whoever he is, can't see any of the things the demon is making him do. Can't imagine what it must be like in there.
During Alex's recent introduction to torment, with every jagged blade pulled across his skin, he fought as hard as he could to reignite the surge he'd felt when Yuri was about to be killed in the desert, trying to gain the power it provided. He pressed himself to feel utter rage, assuming it was the most likely ignition source, but failed. Even Yuri's real death had done nothing to restart the fire. At the moment, the sounds of the Raytheons outside had grown soft and distant, as though the majority had ridden off, possibly to hunt.
Guess now's the time to look for an escape.
Psst, Bennett! Alex shook his shoulder gently, as there seemed to be no safe spot or smooth patch of skin on him to touch. Get some sleep, Al, Bennett muttered. So they can wake us up for round 15 in half an hour? We're dying. We have to... Alex stopped when Bennett coughed blood onto the ground. You're not looking great. Thanks. So, tell me, what does that even mean to you anymore? Bennett asked. Dying. To die. Can we please discuss this later? Do you have a plan to get us out or not? The soldier let out a slight chuckle. This is my plan. Before Alex could muster a response, a powerful voice rose out front along with footsteps. A cadre had returned. When they entered, he saw only white blobs through his swollen-eyed vision. The largest blob up front, a monstrous Raytheon, chuckled to himself and drew a long, gleaming blade from his sheath. But Alex felt no humor. That blade was not meant to torture.
It's meant to cut things in half.
He desperately tugged on Bennett's cold, blood-soaked shirt. Hey, dude, wake up. We need to do something. Like now. Bennett waved his hand off. I'm not playing anymore. The soldier adjusted and tucked his hands under his arms, as though trying to catch some Z's. They're gonna chop our heads off, Alex whispered. That'd be new. Outside, a chant rose, a mass of desert riders shouting, Bos, Thiram, da Sathiron! Leather banners were being beaten like drums as Raytheon birds squawked and horses neighed, as though a circus parade were seconds from rolling over the tent. Been fun, I guess, Alex said to Bennett's shoulder. Bennett shrugged. Guess so. The gang of riders inside the tent closed in on Alex first, the natural choice. Drawing his blade high above his head, the enormous Raytheon muttered some guttural syllables, which seemed to beguile the others, and Alex couldn't help but roll his eyes, beginning to share Bennett's malaise.
Just do it. Screw the song and dance.
The Raytheon was near to swinging when the thunder outside the tent came to a lurching halt. Feet no longer marched in formation, and the chanting had ceased. The atmosphere turned from a wild, militaristic pride to reactionary panic, staying the enormous Raytheon's hand. He and the others listened to the small clashes of steel outside, leading to an eruption of painful screams. The largest shouted orders, and a handful charged out of the tent, while the rest seemed content to obey their own commands. This was as unsure and uncoordinated as the Raytheon cult had yet appeared. Within seconds, the thunder outside returned, now intermixed with the chaos of war. There might have been dozens of attackers storming the encampment for all Alex knew. Mounted riders circled the tent shouting battle cries, creating a symphony that reminded Alex of the cowboy and Indian movies he watched as a kid. The remaining Raytheons inside exchanged unsure glances before charging out, leaving the big one behind, who was making a poor show of confidence. With every cut-off shriek of a desert rider, the combat outside dwindled. Whoever was left was giving it their all, but then, with a flutter like sheets in a heavy wind, a shadow sped around the tent, twisting the gaze of the huge Raytheon, who'd been reduced to shouting boorishly. Spinning, he landed on Alex and Bennett.
Was hoping you'd forgotten about us.
Alex closed his eyes, praying to every god he wasn't about to be sent to the fire again.
Just stay calm. Everything will be fine.
He jolted when hot blood splashed his face, making him unsure if he'd been cut in two. Opening his eyes, he found the huge Raytheon was a foot shorter, headless, his body remaining upright a moment before collapsing with a thud, revealing a cloaked, hooded figure behind it. A staff with curved, multi-pronged blades on each end, smeared with dark blood, was clutched in their hand. Their cloak was deep gray, striped with vibrant cyan, and had a hood of black obscuring their face, but revealing glistening light gray eyes, like sunlight through gypsum, which settled on Alex, bringing on a whole new kind of unease.
It was just you? No army?
Who are you? Alex asked. She pointed the tip of her staff at him, so sharp it seemed to disappear as it turned. You know what I am, and you know we don't like our time wasted. So go on. What are you waiting for? Puff your smoke. Blow your ash. Tell me your clan. The blade was less than an inch from his throat, rendering Alex still from fear. You can't hide, and you know you can't run. So show me your real self. Well, are you an imp or aren't you? Why does everyone keep calling me that? Alex asked. The woman, looking like he'd just told her he tried to eat a tree with a fork once, backed off. I don't. You're not Archfiend? But I can smell wrath on you. Who are you? The both of you. Full names, new and old. I've never seen either of your faces before. Alex was too busy fighting off the anxiety of being threatened by a weapon such as hers to answer any questions. Bennett responded by collapsing onto his side. The woman in the cloak knelt beside him and held her palm over his shoulder as Alex eyed the wrist guards and gauntlets she wore. Why were you taken prisoner? She asked. Raythians torture, kill, perform their sacrament, and move on. They use earthly bodies as vessels for wrath and dispose of them when done. So my only question is, are you earthly bodies? Leaning over Bennett, she sniffed. It can't be. You're both human? What else would we be? Alex asked. The woman rose and stepped away, letting Alex see her tanned face, with a narrow, flat-bridged nose and high, curved eyebrows. Nearing him, she held her hand out, and for a moment he thought it might be to assist, until she stuck a finger in one of the open wounds on his arm. Ow! What the hell? He yelped.
Where has your hand been?
She stepped back as though she'd just found out they were lepers. By the Eve, it's true. Alex stayed quiet, not wanting to upset her further.
Still very scared.
What are you doing here? She asked. We were brought here. Please, this man needs a hospital. I need one too. Are you here to help us? He asked frantically. The one who brought you here. Was it an old man who smells of rotten entrails and shares multitudes of terrible jokes? You know him? Alex responded. With a roar, she slammed her staff into the ground mere feet away from his knees, shaking the ground. So it wasn't just a rumor. They actually did it. No due process. Just barreled forward. Seems to be the way lately. Ma'am, could you please explain what's going on? Alex asked. First, tell me where Isaiah is, she said. He wasn't supposed to let you out of his sight. The guy took off, Bennett said from the ground, facing the other way. Said he would be back soon, except he wasn't. Typical, she said. Just like Isaiah to ignore his responsibilities and do things his way, despite what it would mean for everyone else. When did you last see him? 5 days ago? When he dropped us off at the safe house. Said he was going out to find the demon on his own, Alex answered.
Instead, we did. Yay!
Such a mess. Her shimmering eyes moved between them, narrowing. I didn't think it was possible. Yet here you are. Eve in the flesh. Somewhere you don't belong. A part of something you couldn't understand. A mockery of everything my post used to stand for. Alex was shivering, losing clarity, and couldn't keep conversing for much longer. Please, can you help us? I just want to go home. I'm not here to help you get what you want. I have a job to do, and my orders do not involve you. At least they didn't until now. I suppose neither of you has any clue how important the task you were given is. Bennett rolled over. Your friend Isaiah mentioned something about preventing a war. She laughed. I wouldn't call him my friend. But you're a Medolian, right? Bennett asked, trying to pick himself up from the dirt. Yes, she said with a high tone, as though surprised. How did you find us? Alex asked. Followed the trail of destruction left by these Raythian imposters. Their numbers are growing and concentrated in this region, which isn't far from where the nameless demon was last seen. Something is coalescing. But even without all that, I could have smelled you miles away. Any unearthed creature could. You're lucky it was me who came calling.
Lucky.
But we don't know who you are, Alex said. While she stood, her eyes kept moving, analyzing, and calculating. I'm Mara Lauren, second in line of the Medolian sentries, and I am taking you into custody. You will be transferred to the tribunal, provided it hasn't been shut down already, where you will wait for your fates to be decided by the Senate. We didn't do anything wrong, Alex shouted.
Ow! No more shouting. Hurts.
I'm not your enemy, child. She moved on Alex. I was against using humans in this mandate from the start. The reason the public lost trust in us and forced this debacle is because of the warden's centuries' incompetence. If I'd known he was just going to ignore the mandate and not escort you, I would have insisted I take the lead. Perhaps he simply wanted to let you get back to death as quickly as possible. When do we finally get to do that? Die, Bennett said. I've been trying for hours, given up all sorts of hope. I'd be surprised if there were any left in the old ticker. Yet, here I am, alive, with lungs full of blood. What about your staff there? Looks like it'd do the job. Bennett stuck his neck out for her. Here, chop away. The rapture and wrath within you have already started to take seat, Mara said bluntly. That is why you continue to live. What the hell does that mean, lady? Bennett shouted. We have no idea what the fuck is going on. What is wrath? What is rapture? Why were we abducted from what sounds like a really great nap? Just chop already. I don't have to explain anything, she said sharply. As far as I'm concerned, you both know more than you should. You mean about Joseph? Alex asked. The Archfiend is none of your concern. He can't hide forever. He'll be in chains soon, answering for his crimes against the flesh. The covenant will be honored. Isaiah will be forced to kneel before the entire tribunal and pay for his imbalance, and you two will no longer have anything to worry about.
You are beyond terrifying.
Sounds good to me, Bennett agreed. Alex waved his arms. Hold on, I have to get back to Arizona. Or you could kill us now, going once. Bennett sounded hopeful. Mara gripped her staff and yanked it from the ground. Confusing creatures. I'm glad I experience you rarely. If it's what you really want. No, wait! Alex screamed. No chopping yet. We have information you might need. We can help.
Please, please, please.
You have nothing I want.
Find something to use. This is our only shot. What do we know?
We know where Joseph is. Or where he's going, at least.
Please.
She stayed her hand. You saw the Archfiend? Not possible. I would have sensed him. 5 hours ago. If you hurry, you can catch him. After letting us go, of course, he added with a false grin. Or there's always that killing thing, Bennett suggested again. Be quiet, Mara shouted. They both did as told. She stepped back and began twirling her staff absent-mindedly, keeping her gaze on them. Men are easy to read. I can tell you're not lying, and seeing you like this, broken, it does remind me you should never have had a part in this to begin with. You're simply Eve providers. Not even that much, frankly. I think everyone would sleep better if they knew you two were no longer part of the equation. Very well. If you show me which way the demon has gone, I will take you back where Isaiah found you, and tell him nothing of this. Really? Alex nearly shouted.
Am I really going to see her?
Mara smirked. You can only get in the way. I want you as far away from this as possible, without having to find a way to dispose of your bodies, of course. Alex would have cried.
Melissa.
Thank you. You don't know what this... But... Mara stopped him. If I find out you two have misled me in any way, I'll have no problem delivering your tainted corpses to the tribunal, and will gladly accept whatever punishment is handed down, even if it means starting another war. Do we understand each other? Absolutely, Alex said, his toes wiggling away in his shoes.
This is it. I'm going home.